Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be discussing whether the Bible condones rape or not. Now, this is a very contentious issue, as you can imagine, with many vocal advocates on each side. So let's get right into it. Have you ever heard from somebody that the Bible supports rape, or at least condones it? Well, whether this criticism is coming from a well-to-do Christian or a non-believer, it's a serious objection, and one that shouldn't be taken lightly. A quick disclaimer, this information I will be presenting here is from a book by Trent Horn titled Hard Sayings, A Catholic Approach to Answering Bible Difficulties. This book is wonderful and surveys a great multitude of topics, ranging everything from slavery to the creation story in Genesis and back. Now, I can't cover every instance that's used to justify the idea that the Bible somehow supports rape, but we will look over some of the most commonly cited examples they use in their defense. The first of these is Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 28 through 29, which says, "If a man meets a virgin who is not betrothed, and seizes her and lies with her, and they are found, then the man who lay with her shall give to the father of the young woman 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has violated her. He may not put her away all his days." Now, right away, taken out of immediate context, this verse seems to be a pretty heavy hit to the side that claims the Bible doesn't support rape, but I will explain it shortly. Also, a side note about adultery can be found in verse 22 that says, "If a man is discovered lying with a woman who is married to another, they both shall die. The man who was lying with the woman, as well as the woman. Thus shall you purge the evil from Israel." This may seem harsh and unwarranted from our modern day views, but taken from the understanding of how this society functioned in ancient Israel, it makes sense. This is too much to go into in this video and deserves a video in its own right on why death was the punishment for adultery. So please don't dispute this point in the comment section below, as it's not even the topic of this video. Now, with the punishment for adultery being death in mind, let's look at verses 23 through 24. They say, "If there is a young woman, a virgin, who is betrothed, and a man comes upon her in the city and lies with her, you shall bring them both out to the gate of the city, and there stone them to death. The young woman, because she did not cry out, though she was in the city, and the man, because he violated his neighbor's wife. Thus shall you purge the evil from your midst." Now, this might at first seem like rape, but in fact, neither party here is said to have been objecting to the activity, showing that it was consensual. We know that the young woman didn't cry out for help while in the city, which would have been taken as an objection. This is contrasted with verses 25 through 27, which say, "But if it is in the open fields that a man comes upon the betrothed young woman, seizes her, and lies with her, only the man who lay with her shall die. You shall do nothing to the young woman, since the young woman is not guilty of a capital offense, as when a man rises up against his neighbor and murders him. So, in this case, it was in the open fields that he came upon her, and though the betrothed young woman may have cried out, there was no one to save her." It is important to note that the woman here is given the benefit of the doubt. It's made clear that it's better to let a woman who had an adulterous consensual encounter with another man free, rather than to punish a victim of rape. These last two verses are in stark contrast to the prevailing norm of the ancient Near East, who said that a victim of rape deserved to be put to death. Now, if we look back at Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 28 through 29, it is most probably speaking of an unmarried woman, because it simply states the rapist violated her. This is in contrast to verse 24, which says, "He violated his neighbor's wife," thus showing that the woman in that specific case is married. This is important because if the man raped his neighbor's wife, then he wouldn't marry her because she was already married, but instead be put to death. However, in the case of an unmarried woman, the rapist would be forced to marry the woman he raped. Now, this might seem outrageous, but in this culture, women who were raped were unfairly looked upon as damaged goods and not fit to be married by nearly all the men. It is especially important with that point that we don't read in our own 21st century culture into the text, but instead look at it from a historical perspective, or rather from the way the people back then would have. This would require a video on its own to explain, so I won't get into that in this specific video. With this in mind, it needs to be noted that a woman's inability to marry was devastating, because marriage would be the primary method through which she attained economic stability. Now, she could, of course, rely on her father, but he would eventually die, and she'd be left with the chance of possible starvation, or she may have even resorted to prostitution as a means of economic stability. Of course, the man who raped the unmarried woman could be executed, like in the case of the married woman, but the unmarried woman would be left with no form of restitution. She would be without a husband and family to provide for her, and likely starve. This is precisely why marriage was forced upon the rapist. Of course, this all may seem a little shocking to us from our 21st century view, but taken in context, it makes better sense, like how there was no government form of healthcare over 2,000 years ago. Also, Trent Horn provides an example from 2 Samuel chapter 13, verse 16, to validify the claim that marriage was more of an institution that supported survival and family stability more so than it supported romantic relationships. Although Horn points out that people in ancient Israel and in ancient world did marry out of love, as is evidenced by the book of Ruth. Anyway, in regards to the 2 Samuel chapter 13 verse 16, Trent Horn says, "Keep in mind that while this solution to the problem of rape may seem shocking to us, for a woman living in ancient Israel, it would have provided at least some relief to her plight. Consider, for example, the episode that took place between King David's children Amonah and Tamar. Amonah fell in love with his half-sister Tamar, and when she refused to have sex with him, he raped her. Surprisingly, Tamar begs her half-brother before the rape to stop and to marry her. Even after the rape, she pleads for Ammon to not send her away, and says, 'No, my brother, for this wrong in sending me away is greater than the other which you did to me.'" Finally, and perhaps the most important thing to note in this video, is from Exodus chapter 22, verses 15 through 16, which say, "When a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall make her his wife by paying the bride price. If her father refuses to give her to him, he must still pay him the bride price for virgins." This means that a father could refuse to give his daughter over to the rapist, and instead keep her, as well as demand that he pay monetary compensation. In the end, putting this all together shows us that the Bible is definitely not pro-rape, and does everything in its power to condemn it in its entirety. We will end here with a quote from Trent Horn about rape and the Bible that sums up this entire video. Horn says, "This law's primary purpose was to deter men from thinking that they could rape or seduce a woman without any negative consequences for themselves." Now that seems a whole lot like the same mindset we have today regarding this issue. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it helpful. Let me know whether you did or didn't in the comment section below. And if you did, definitely hit that like button, as it helps me out a lot and shows me what you guys like. And feel free to let me know of any topics you want me to cover next, or if you want more of these videos on biblical interpretation. Also, please consider subscribing so you can stay up to date on all of my latest content. As always, God bless.